Welcome back to week 36. This is video 2 of 3 videos. This week, we're talking about annual goal setting. In our first video, we really just kind of went over at a high level what it is and why you need to perform it. And in our third video, we're going to talk about making pivots after you've created an annual plan. And in this video, we're going to get into the details of actually creating an annual plan. Now, when we talk about annual goal setting, another way that you may hear this referred to as your annual strategic planning, they're really the same thing. You're coming up with a strategy to execute against for the entire year, building out a roadmap. That's why that video 3 is going to be so important when you talk about pivots, because as we all know, if 2020 taught us anything, that sometimes you have a plan and then you have to pivot because things don't go as you're expecting them. So how do you perform annual goal setting? Well, first and foremost, set aside time to do it. Don't wing it. When we do ours at SB Pace, and any business, any company that I've ever worked for or that we've coached on how to do annual planning, annual goal setting, we tell them to set aside multiple buckets of time across several days or weeks. So we personally use 4-hour buckets. We do 4 hours, 2 or 3 times a week across a couple of weeks. There's multiple things that you want to cover. And you also want to be able to do some brainstorming, walk away, reflect, come back, make adjustments, and then keep moving forward. And that's really why you need that reflection time, because sometimes you just can't think of everything all at once. And sometimes when you have time to walk away from a goal and reflect on it, you realize, like, well, maybe that's not quite the right goal. So that's why we do it that way. That's why we recommend that our clients do it that way as well. So you want to break it apart across several days or weeks, and you want to do it in no more than 4-hour sessions. Like taking on annual planning or your strategic planning 8 hours at a time it's pretty lofty. First off, you're not getting any other work done. If you're a small business, that's not really feasible. And second, you kind of get a little bit like just brain fried when you do it for that many hours at a time. So take advantage of having it broken across days. And what you want to start with is start by doing a postmortem on the current year, right? So when we think about doing our strategic planning, we start with talking about the current year and what went really well for us during the current year, what's going really well, what could we improve on, what didn't go well, what was just flat out failures for us. It requires you to be really honest with yourself and to really look at things very objectively, right? Like if you have data that shows, products or services that you released that just did not do well in the marketplace, and talk about those and figure out, was it because we didn't market it well? Was it because the timing was off? Was the quality off? Was it not really in, an area of expertise for us and we tried to sell it anyway? We tried to solve a problem in the marketplace that wasn't really ours to solve, or that we tried to solve with the wrong product or service. So how can, so look at that. Like, what did we do well? What do we need to improve on? What were we just flat out bad at? How can we hold each other more accountable, and how can we be more accountable ourselves, right? So taking a look at yourself and what can you do differently as you progress into the next year, because we all have ways we can improve. And if you're a strong leader, then you're going to be able to admit, like, oh yeah, I'm not so great at that, or I didn't do a really great job of letting the team have their weekends, or I worked people long days, or I took too much time off, or whatever it might be, right? So how can you leverage accountability more is the good next step. Then we look at, how am I doing with respect to balance, right? So we think it's important to have a work-life balance sometimes. And we don't mean like, you work 8 hours a day and then you get 8 hours of whatever, and then you sleep for 8 hours. Life doesn't work like that. That's just not how it goes, especially when you're a business owner. But you might work like 4 weeks straight where you don't get a day off because you are really like in the hustle and flow of like getting ready to release something big, or you're working with a huge client or whatever it is. That happens. But then, maybe you just take 3 or 4 days off in the middle of a week, and you got to balance it out, right? It's over time. We look at the course of the whole year and how was our balance, not on a day-to-day basis, because as a small business owner, you really can't predict what's going to happen on any given day, especially if you're just starting out. And so you really need to think more holistically about balance, right? Are you taking time to at least go get 30 minutes of exercise in? Are you eating healthy? Are you getting enough sleep? How are you reducing your stress? How much time are you spending with your family, or how much time are you avoiding your family because your family causes stress? I mean, let's be real. It could be, that could be true. That could be a thing, right? So take a look at balance, and then look at where did you fall short on the goals for the current year, right? So if you've already done strategic planning or annual goal planning, where are you falling short on the goals that were set forth for the year, and why? Why did you miss those goals? Was it just, you know, did COVID-19 happen, or did you spend too much time focused on marketing and not enough time on actual sales? Did you not have a high enough quality product and people weren't interested in it? Like this, you need to look at not only how you performed, but why you performed the way that you did. And then also take a look at your reporting KPIs and metrics. Like, what are you using? What data are you using? And where can you improve upon that data so that you can make better decisions for your business? Because that's the whole point of reporting and metrics and KPIs, is making better decisions for your business, making educated and informed decisions. Okay. Once you've done that, you've done sort of the postmortem, then, and honestly, that could be just a one session. That could be a 4-hour session right there. Could be 2 4-hour sessions. It really depends on one, how many people are involved, and 2, how much there is to say. And, that's another thing when you think about who do you involve in your annual goal setting. Well, for us at SB Pace, it's just me and Corey. So it's both of us working together. But if you have a team of, 4 or 5 people, like, involve as many of them as you can. The more people that the more you can engage people, the more they're going to be invested in the actual planning, and the better it's going to be for your business. They'll be invested in executing against that plan as well as helping to create the plan. So people like to be involved. So if you've got a high performing team or you're working on building one, this is a great way to get them involved. Okay, so now you've got your postmortem. So the next step is really identifying the areas of your business where you want to set goals for, right? So this could be, you want to look at revenue. Do you want to look at your number of customers? Do you want to look at your customer service rating or your customer satisfaction rating? Do you want to take a look at the products and services you have in the marketplace? And are there some that you want to roll back because you don't want to use them anymore? Are they're no longer viable, so you sort of want to give them end of life? Or are there some where you want to introduce new products and services, right? That's always an option as well, that you may introduce a new product or service. And then finally, process improvements. And there's other areas too. You could be looking at technology. You could look at, the human resources, like hiring people. Just look at the areas of your business and figure out which ones do you want to touch on with your annual goals. And then what you do next is, after you've got these the buckets, and you don't have to make a decision on the buckets at this point. You just list out the buckets that you want to put goals in, or you think you might want to. Then brainstorm a list of possible goals or possible things that you could put into those buckets. So for example, revenue, you could want to increase the amount of revenue you're making. You could want to increase your profit margins. You could want to you could want to take a look at the pricing on products and lower your cost of goods. There's a lot of options that could go into each bucket. So you get the areas together and then brainstorm possible goals for each bucket. And then once you've brainstormed the possible goals, then you come back through and you actually pick the goals that you want to work on. And once you've identified the goals, then you define them in great detail, right? So it's the when, the how, the who, the what. It's very, very specific for each goal, with the most important part being when. When will this goal be finished, right? Is this one that we're going to work on all 4 quarters, or is this one that's only going to take 1 quarter and we're going to do it in the first quarter of the year? And that when is important because you want to understand, you want to be able to plan these out for execution. So getting and once they're plant mapped for execution, that's when the real detail comes in of who's going to be working on it, when does it start, what are the tasks associated with it. And this is a great way to build high performing teams, which we've referenced in a previous week, right? Where if you are able to take these annual strategic goals for your business and then decompose them into quarterly goals that your team can help execute against, you are going to just build the most amazing teams possible. So this is how you do it. This is where everything sort of starts to tie together in terms of building high performing teams. And one thing that we always tell everybody to do, create one really big stretch goal. Now you could do multiple stretch goals and you could do a stretch goal for each area. We just do one. We do one stretch goal, but it's really up to you how many you would like to do. The reason we do one is because we want to make sure that our focus is on the right things all year long, and that is accomplishing all of the goals that we have, or getting as close as we possibly can to accomplishing them. So we pick one stretch goal. It's usually around revenue, and then we see if we can hit that stretch goal, but more importantly, we want to make sure we're executing on all of our other goals. And then we're reviewing those goals regularly as part of our weekly staff meeting as the year progresses to see how we're tracking against the goals. And how does budget fit into your annual planning? I'm sorry. So typically your annual budget is done after goal setting, ideally, so that you understand if one of your goals is to switch from using, I don't know, let's just say you're going to switch from using Google Docs to using SharePoint. So there's an investment in that, both time and financial and possibly training. So maybe you have to include in your budget training dollars to train someone how to learn how to be the admin for SharePoint. Maybe you want to get a certification for somebody. You also probably have to pay for SharePoint licenses, things like that. So you want to include them in your budget. So the budget is typically done after the annual goal setting, so that you make sure that the things that you plan that you want to work on, that you can afford to work on them because you've included them in the budget and you have the capital to make those, to execute against those plans. Okay. That is it for video 2. We've got video 3 coming up on annual goal setting. And again, on that one, we're going to talk about pivots. So look forward to seeing you in the next video.